Good evening, everybody. So I think the first question is, how many people have been to Chelsea? Oh, okay, just over, yeah, just about half. Okay, that's useful. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I mean, what better way could we have a Thursday night in one of the most beautiful towns in the country, in one of the most beautiful buildings in the country, and with some of the most beautiful people in the town. I was looking at you. Yeah, I know there's Graham and Glenn as well, but I thought I'd look at you. So yeah, but no, it's really nice to be here and to meet you all and to be surrounded by Paul's amazing paintings. So it seems like a very special night. So we've got 45 days to go until Chelsea. Not to worry you, but that's how long you've got to get your stand sorted. And if you have been to Chelsea, then you'll know how it feels and what it looks like. If you haven't, you probably get an idea because it gets so well covered in all the press. But Chelsea is, they call it the greatest show on earth, and it is a pretty good show. It's great fun, and it's really interesting. It runs for 5 days. So this year it's the 20th of May to the 25th of May to the 24th, and it's been going for 112 years. The only time they've stopped is for a couple of world wars and for COVID. Otherwise, they've managed to put on a show for a pretty long time. And before Chelsea became Chelsea, it was called the Spring Show. And that was all about the horticultural world and the Victorians really showing off, the pre-Victorians showing off their horticultural quality and splendour. So it's a great way to get up close and personal to plants and gardens. But education has always been at the heart of Chelsea, and it's something that we forget. When I was editor of the Garden magazine and in charge of publishing for the RHS for 16 years, education was always there, and it was always really important for Chelsea, whether it's educating about design, plants, or horticulture, or gardening, whatever it is. And it's not a new thing. The Dig for Victory campaign was huge. Through Chelsea, and the RHS learned a lot about how to talk to people and how to educate people about the Dig for Victory campaign in the 30s. But then fast forward today, they've got area all about science and innovation and how the industry can support us gardeners. It's also really important for the trade. And the trade use Chelsea as a really important selling point, and it launches so many new plants. So there's David Austin roses, which you may well know about. So you've got those lovely English shrub roses. David Austin roses has used Chelsea as a huge marketing campaign for many years and very successfully. But it's not just about the plants. There's also new materials. So there was a designer called John Brooks in the 70s and 80s, and he introduced concrete paving slabs. He was a great modernist, and he brought concrete paving to Chelsea for the first time. In the 2000s, Perspex was the first time came into Chelsea. And so Chelsea has this quite interesting, it's about the plants and about gardening, and everything's all meant to be very nice and jolly and having a glass of fizz and seeing people. But also for the trade, it's just so important. And it's quite easy to forget that it is a very, very commercial enterprise. And that when you look at the different materials or the different plants coming in, then it's really important for whatever trade. It's also introduced us to some of the best known names around, whether you're into gardening or not. So there's Beth Chatto in the 1970s, who coined the right plant, right place phrase. Jekka McVicker, the herb specialist. So all of the point is that Chelsea is a great ground for stomping ground for new talent, for new materials and new plants. For those of you who've been, I don't know whether you are verging more towards the gardens or more towards the plants. But there's always been a bit of historic rivalry between the horticulture and the knowledge in the big pavilion in the marquee compared to the Ponzi garden designers floating about outside making pretty things. And it was always quite a rivalry, because there was the snobbery of being a specialist horticulturist inside, and then there was the designers. Those times have changed, and I think they've changed for two reasons. Because people like Dan Pearson are extraordinary plants people, so you can't say that they're not. And also a lot of the designers have actually used those nurseries from inside the pavilion outside to make their gardens, and that's been a really good thing for the industry. But Chelsea is always trying to innovate. It is a very historic global brand, but it is always trying to change things. So, over the years, they had a fresh category, which was bringing artworks and sculptors to Chelsea to try and mix it up. They have the Chelsea Late on a Friday night now, which Sarah Cox, the Radio 2 DJ, is DJing at. So they're trying to grow audiences and to try and make that Chelsea that awful word of being irrelevant. But it's tricky for the RHS because they want to maintain their brand and all of the sponsorship that comes with that, but also they know they need to grow. But that challenge of sponsorship is actually really acute. Obviously, we're having fun at the moment globally with tariffs and trade wars and things. But for Chelsea, it is an issue because the funding is hard. Most show gardens, so the show gardens, the big ones you see on the TV down the road called Main Avenue, they cost anywhere between £300,000 and £500,000. Now that nowadays is a lot of money when you've got 160,000 people walking through the door. You spend £500,000 on a garden, you then probably spend another £200,000, £300,000 to activate that, so to paint the taxis, to do your newspaper advertising, to do your digital advertising, to have your staff there, your hospitality. That doesn't, the £500,000 doesn't get you your hospitality, that gets you the garden. So it's a different environment from where we were 10 years, 15 years, certainly 20, 30 years ago when there were newspapers sponsoring it in the banks and people like that. Recently, there's been a thing called Project Giving Back, which has been an initiative of two philanthropists who have remained nameless. No one knows who they are, but they've put in about £10 million to support gardens at Chelsea. And so what their concept has been is to have the money for the garden and then to support a good cause. And so that's why in the last few years, you get a lot more charities and kind of more heartfelt messaging from different organisations who want the TV coverage, they want the exposure, and Project Giving Back has been able to pay for that. That finishes in 2026, Project Giving Back. So 2027 is going to be quite an interesting one to see how the RHS does generate those new leads and people with the money who want to spend on gardens. Things like relocation are now really important as well. There's Harriet Anderson, who was is a Gardeners World presenter. She did a garden a couple of years ago, and she said the garden was for a baby unit in Kent, but it happened to stop on its way via Chelsea. And so sponsors, whether it's Project Giving Back or an individual sponsor, they will normally set aside about 20 grand to rebuild the garden in its final location. And those locations are everywhere across the UK. From this year, gardens are going to Durham, to London, to North Yorkshire, to Plymouth, and so on. So that's the background to Chelsea, and that's why we go. I've been going for about 25 years, I think, now. So I started when I was 10. Thank you. And it's, people say, why'd you go? Well, I go because it's my job and it's my industry, but also because I have this nagging feeling of the 1 year I don't go, it's going to be really, really good. I've had to go through some shockers just to make sure that I'm there for the good ones. But my advice, I don't know how many of you go regularly or not, is if you go once every 2 or 3 years, then you're keeping your hand in on the Chelsea knowledge. But every year is probably quite hard going. So I'm going to spend a bit of time taking you through what's going on this year, both within the plants and in the gardens. So let's have a look at the plants. So the pavilion, the tent, the marquee, whatever you want to call it, is 3 acres. The whole site of Chelsea is only 11 acres. It's a really small site. And this year, they're welcoming quite a few more international exhibitors. So we've got Barbados, we've got Antigua and Barbuda, South Africa, Grenada, St Vincent and the Grenadines, loads of more countries coming in to show their wares, to show their beautiful floristry skills and their horticultural skills and make us feel of lovely warm climes, not that we need it at the moment. So they'll be in the pavilion. There's a new exhibitor. Now, I don't know why this always makes me laugh, and it's really not a funny subject. But this new exhibitor is going to be a company called Farewell Flowers, and this is all about buying really lovely flowers for your funeral. And so it's not funny at all, because I kind of have that awkward moment of talking about funerals. So the woman behind this is Jill Hodgson, and she is a brilliant person. She started a movement called Flowers from the Farm. And about 10, 15 years ago, there was a realization that most of our cut flowers were coming from Holland, Israel, Northern Africa, all being flown in. And so Jill said, we need seasonal British local flowers, cut flowers. And so she created Flowers from the Farm, which is an organization, a membership group. And there's now 1,100 different individual growers who are part of Flowers from the Farm, and including me and my wife set up a company on growing foliage in lockdown. It was a really great idea about planting lots of shrubs, and then we'd cut the foliage and sell it to florists and hotels, which sounds really good, but you would have hoped that me as a gardener should have known that actually plants take a while to grow. So we launched a great fanfare thinking we're going to become millionaires overnight because all of the foliage either gets shipped in from Ireland or from Cornwall. There's nothing that grows in sort of mainland UK, if you don't. I hope I don't offend Cornish people. So we said, yeah, well, let's tell everybody about it. We got coverage in magazines, became the 1,000th member of Flowers from the Farm. And then thought, we've got nothing to sell because all the plants are about this big because we couldn't afford any more. So we can now start selling them. Who else is in the pavilion? All the normal regulars, the people you would expect. So foxgloves, the Botanic Nursery. There's Japanese maples. There's Peter Beale's roses. There's Raymond Everson clematis. Now, Raymond is a very interesting guy because he has developed clematis to be not just a standard clematis that we think that would grow up a pergola or up a wall. So what he's created, he's developed over the last 40 years in his nursery in Guernsey, he's created clematis that just grow again, around the on the floor. So they're like a carpet bedding, effectively, of clematis. He's created ones that come up each year, but they're not very woody, so you don't have to tie them into anything. And he's also created clematis that you can put in a hanging basket and hang down. So when you're walking past your hanging basket, you can see all the flowers hanging down. And again, he uses Chelsea to innovate, to show his brand and to sell his stock. We've got fuchsias, Meconopsis, which are unusual blue poppies, succulents, all of the different stuff. We've also got Sarah Cook, and I don't know if any of you been to Sissinghurst? Yeah. So Sissinghurst is obviously a very well-known garden. She was head gardener there for 14 years, and she is a complete plant geek. I mean, if you ever want to draw or maybe paint the definition of a proper plant enthusiast, Sarah is your person. And she has collected 25 tall bearded iris. And those talk about niche and a niche and a niche. Tall bearded iris, so these are lovely bearded iris you'll be seeing in May, and they've got the lovely top bits and bottom bits of the flowers, and they come out of the pointy leaves. And Cedric Morris, the artist in Suffolk, he collected and he hybridized a lot of tall bearded iris. He was obsessed by them. So they're called Benton End irises, and because that was his home in Suffolk. And she has collected them. So she's got 25. He originally grew 90, but we can't find the other 65. So she's going to be there. So Paul, wherever you are, I know you don't want the limelight. He likes it now. He waved then. Do you want to come up and take over? So I thought, in homage to you, we better talk about some edible stuff to see what's going on in the pavilion. So we've got edible mushrooms. So mushrooms, if any of you got a few pounds spare and want to invest, you could buy this painting, or you could buy a company that grows mushrooms, because mushrooms is huge business, or shrooms, as we like to call them. So if you're down with the kids, you call them shrooms, or if you're Corey, somebody tells you about shrooms and she doesn't know what they mean. But so mushrooms are a really big business, and what Cayley Brothers have created packs, impregnated wood or compacted sawdust, and that has got all of the inoculants and the mycelium in there. You buy it, you mist it, you keep it warm, humid, and then you get your own edible mushrooms after 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is. So they're doing a roaring trade, and they're actually now supplying Sainsbury's, which is quite interesting. So from a little hobbyist, specialist Instagram startup, they're doing really well, and now they're at Chelsea. Got Chiltern Seeds, so they do a lot of fruit and veg. Frank P. Matthews, if you ever need any fruit trees, or generally any trees, but especially fruit, Frank P. Matthews of Worcestershire, they're the nicest company to work for, apart from Gladwell's, and they're absolutely lovely. But they also, like Gladwell's, know their stuff very well. And they will be having their crab apple collection. So crab apples flower beautifully at this time of year, and then you get the lovely leaves, then you get the autumn leaves that drop with lots of different colours, and then you get the fruit. So they're going to be on display. And then there's another interesting company called She Grows Veg. And She Grows Veg was the idea of a former jewellery designer. She was bored with her job as designing jewellery, called Lucy Hutchings, and she said, well, I'm going to start growing veg. But she said, I didn't want to grow normal veg, I wanted to grow heirloom and heritage veg. So she really wants to go back to the old, really special, non-hybridized, non-commercial seed. So she created She Grows Veg. She's now got something like 250,000 people following her on Instagram. She's now created her own heritage seed company, and she's now for the second year displaying at Chelsea. So it's really exciting when we have this change up. It's lovely having the Blackmore and Langdon delphiniums and the Peterbilt's roses, but we want these new people, these Cayley brothers for the mushrooms and She Grows Veg. We want all of this novelty coming in. It's good for media, but also it's good for the industry. We've got houseplants as well. Houseplants in the pavilion. Houseplants are still really, really important, especially with people aged 20 to 30. It's a gateway drug into gardening, as we like to think of it, just to try and excite the horticultural world. And we're happy to be dealers. That was what I should have said. Yeah, they've got the houseplants in the pavilion, and they've got houseplant studios. So these are these little buildings dotted around in Ranelagh Gardens in the nice wooded, shaded, cool bit of Chelsea. And you can go in there, and they're these little garden huts, and different people are displaying their houseplant wares in there. So that's it for houseplants and for plants in general. We're now going to have a quick sweep across the gardens. So where do we start? Well, the gardens are divided into three categories: containers, balcony, and show gardens. If we were here 50 years ago, we'd have been talking about show gardens, rock gardens, alpine gardens, all of that sort of stuff. But all of that isn't very fashionable anymore. We'd have talked also about rhododendrons and azaleas, but none of that's particularly fashionable anymore, sadly, because they're superb plants. So we've got these three categories, and the gardens, as I say, they're costing anything between 20k and 500,000. They're all judged with a consistent judging criteria, and they're all very experienced judges. The RHS use a whole network of people to judge. The only time I was ever asked to judge, I was really chuffed, and I thought, oh, this is going to make my mark. And it was the year that James May, the Top Gear presenter, did a garden for a bit of PR, and it was a plastic garden, plasticine garden, and that was the only garden I got ever asked to judge. And it wasn't even a proper award. I thought, oh, great, thanks very much, RHS. We're also looking at some themes like climate change. A designer loves a theme. If you've ever had your garden designed, or your house designed by an architect, or your business rebranded, you've got to have a theme. You've got to hook it back to something. And 2 or 3 gardens are focusing on climate change. So one of them is a company called Killick & Co. So they're a financial investment house. And their theme is saving for a rainy day. And they're linking, probably very timely, unpredictable financial turbulent markets with, I'm just going to give it a gold straight away, with unpredictable climate change. You see, there we go. The designer loves a brief. So Baz Granger, the designer, he is using mainly plants from south of France. And what he's not wanting to do is to scare us and say, oh, we're going to lose our lawn and you're never going to have an apple tree and all of this. But if any of you are gardeners, your garden will be naturally changing. We will have the climate in 20, 30 years' time of mid-France, south of France. Plants are moving northwards. So the plants that are happy here right now will be much happier in Scotland in 10, 20 years' time, because for the ones which are quite heat sensitive. So it's quite important that we as gardeners think, okay, well, do we really need a lawn? Do we need to please never buy box? I don't know if any of you own a box or a Buxus nursery, but please don't buy box trees or box plants because they won't survive because of not necessarily climate change, but because of box tree caterpillar and the moth and the fungus. So our climate really is changing. So it's a really serious message that people are wanting to get out is do something different in your garden. Think what plants are growing well in France or Spain, places like that. There are trees growing in London, avocado trees, which are fruiting. And they've been growing for 20, 30 years in London, and you can get really good avocado fruit off them. So, things are changing. So Baz is going to look at that. We've also got another couple of new designers, Matthew and Josh. They're doing a Garden of the Future, and that is about the threat of the climate on people who rely on the land to grow and to live off the land. So, maybe mainly African countries. But really, how can they innovate? How can they collaborate? How can they learn about how to deal with the changing climate? So that's through climate resilient crops, understanding your soil better. There's a whole big movement in the industry called no dig. So you should never need to dig your beds. You should just put 3 inches of compost on your flower beds every year, and it'll stop the weeds, and you grow your veg on there as well, and it's a much better way of gardening. So all these ideas will come up in this. And then the other garden, which sounds quite interesting, because I'm becoming a bit obsessed about rainforests. I don't know if any of you heard, there was a book by a guy called Guy Shrubsole, I think. I thought his name was quite good for a planty book. He wrote about rainforests, and there's a designer at Chelsea, Zoe Claymore, and she is saying the rainforests used to clothe about a fifth of the UK, and now they are 1% of the UK. And so people don't think we have rainforests. We do have rainforests here, mainly on the west coast, where it's wetter, windier, reduced variability in climate temperature. So she's going to be pushing that. And then we've got nature and rewilding, because it wouldn't be something to do with the media if rewilding wasn't mentioned. So we've got something which I'd never heard of, which is terribly trendy. It's not shrooms, it's sea wilding. So this is the importance of seagrass, which is our only native flowering plant in the ocean, which I never knew. So there's a garden all about seagrass and why we can use, and we should be using it for marine conservation. And there's also a local designer called Nicola Oakey. She's doing a garden down there called the Songbird Survival Garden, which is a metaphor of a narrative of a day in a bird's life. And the bird looks for shelter, water, and food, and those elements are going to be coming through in the garden. Now, I was born in Norfolk, but I grew up in the southeast, so that's why I don't sound Norfolkian. But I always remember with Norfolk, there's signs called "Slow You Down." I don't know if you've ever seen it in Norfolk. And I always thought this was, they speak another language, the land of my birth. But who knew that "Slow You Down" would become a theme for a Chelsea garden this year? So some Norfolk design, you'll grab anything if you're a designer on a theme. A company called Carey Garden Design, who live in Norfolk, they've taken their inspiration from the Norfolk coast, and it's all about slow you down, which I have to say in a really bad accent, and also a pushback about everyone just being too busy. And then, of course, you've got to have something about cold water bathing. So there's a really random connection on one of the balcony gardens, which I don't understand is how the balcony gardens are really narrow, and it's meant to be a verdant retreat, because we like the word verdant. It's sponsored by Fettercairn Wilderness, which is a Scottish distillery. And then they're going to have a bath in the middle of it for your cold water plunging. It's only missing the kitchen sink, and then you get every keyword, every Google search term in there perfectly. So there we go. So that is a romp through Chelsea. I'm sorry, it's probably a bit exhausting, but I think what I really wanted to get across was the diversity, and there really is something for everybody. If you've never been, treat yourself one day. The tickets come on sale in October. Don't delay. Always buy them early, because otherwise you can't get any. But my advice would be to always go with what your passion is. If you want to look at garden furniture or machinery, then spend your day looking at that. If you really want to be inspired by design, spend time on the gardens. Everybody's Chelsea journey should be personal to them, because otherwise what you do is you just walk around. It's like walking around an art gallery and not knowing what you like. Actually work out what you like, spend time enjoying it, and see what you can get from it. But also do remember that Chelsea is not real. And so every year for the last 25 years, my poor wife, I come home from Chelsea in a really bad mood, really tired, and then I just look and say, oh, I'm the worst designer, my garden looks awful, and what are we doing, and why can't you help me more? And then we don't speak for 2 days, and then I come back out of my depression, and then everything's good, and I love my garden again. But Chelsea isn't real. There's loads of ideas, but don't compare your home garden to it, because if you do, like me, then you get quite fed up. Anyway, that's it. You're going to have a little handout on the end, but if you do go to Chelsea, enjoy it. I'm there all week on the dog garden with Jamie Butterworth and Monty Don, and but if you go next year, I'm sure I would love to see you. So thank you for your time and enjoy your evening.
On behalf of us all, Chris, thank you most
Well, it's exhausting. Sorry about that. Yeah.
I think we could probably all agree that Chris is a leading voice in the world of horticulture, and his expertise is only matched by his passion for talking about all these wonderful things. Yeah. And I think it's given us all a real insight into what to look for at Chelsea, what to enjoy, what we can hear about and learn more about when we actually see it in real life, either on the television or in person. So thank you for sharing your wonderful tales and expertise with us. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, I have. I hope you will.
And we've learned about shrooms.
Yes.